Good evening. Good evening, my lovelies. How are you this evening? It is, what is it? It's Wednesday, the 9th of February. And I'm here this evening in the Home Baking Business Community UK. Or you might be watching me on my Facebook page, Annie Bennett Business. Or you might be in my lovely membership, the Home Baking Professional Society. So if you are in any of those and you are watching, and I can see some people are, good evening to you. Do say hello. You know, I do like a bit of company. So if you are there, do say hello. And if you give it some thumbs up and some hearts and all that kind of malarkey, then the Facebook algorithm loves that and it tells other people that I'm here. Oh, I have a hello. Good evening. I have a Facebook user. Hello, my lovely. As I'm coming to you via StreamYard, if you don't tell StreamYard, if you don't give StreamYard permission to use your name, then I can't see your name, but I can see there are some people here. So hello. I can only see Facebook user this end. But hello, on a little wave. Hello. Nice to see you. So do say hello. Hello, hello, hello. I am very well, thank you. I am very well, and I will tell you why I'm particularly well in a second. Once I know that we've got a few people on here. You might have noticed that my background is different this evening. Not my usual background, or not the background that I've been coming to you with of late. And there is a reason for that, of course, because some of you know I'm away this week. I am on the lovely island of Guernsey, which is a beautiful place to be. I don't know if any of you have visited over here, but it's beautiful. And quite temperate. It's lovely, lovely weather at the moment. I'm told it's quite warm for this time of year over here. But their daffodils are out. So it's spring already over here. Whereas it's not at home. When I came, when I flew over on Saturday, there were definitely no daffodils out over at home, but there are here, which tells me that spring is a little ahead over here. So hello, if you are joining me this evening. I can see we've got a few people on, which is great. Hello, so do say hello. This evening then, I'm going to be talking, as I've told you already, about finances. I'll tell you a little bit, give you a few hints and tips and advice. If you've got any questions that I can answer in the session, then please do answer. Please do ask, and I will do my best to answer or point you in the right direction, which is the way I do things generally, isn't it? And also, as is the routine recently, I've also written a blog with all that I'm going to say this evening in there. So if you're a reader rather than a listener, you're welcome to go and have a look at that. I've put the link to that blog. That will be popping up in the Home Baking Business Community UK at around about 8 o'clock. That's roughly when I've scheduled it for. And it's there with all its links. Okie dokie. And I've got the notes. I've got the blog that I've written here so that I can make sure that I don't forget anything. Because my short-term memory is shocking, as some of you know. So let's talk finances then. If you are new to running a business, I think that perhaps the finance side can be the scariest side. If you're not sure how it all works and you're not sure, what's behind it all, because it can be, because it's quite an official thing, isn't it? It's quite a legal thing. And so if you're not sure what's going on and how it all works, then it can be quite overwhelming. It's actually a lot simpler than lots of people make it out to be. It's it can be more it's more sort of accessible than as it first appears. Okay. If you understand a few basic things about it, hopefully it'll sort of put your mind at rest and think, oh, okay, I don't need to panic then, because it's easy to be panicked if you're not sure how something works. Yes, so I know that feeling. I know how how that can be if you're not sure. So let me give you a few basics, and hopefully that'll ease your mind if you're a little bit worried about it. Basically, if you're starting up your home baking business, the chances are that you're going to be starting as a sole trader. The alternative is to be starting up as a limited company, which generally is a lot more complicated. And personally, I wouldn't recommend that as a startup. I would recommend starting just as a sole trader. You can move on to being a limited company further down the line if your business goes that way. But I shouldn't worry about being a limited company for now. Just think about being a sole trader. And most of the advice I'm giving you this evening is based on that. But don't let that worry. Don't let that panic you, because it's sort of just the way how things are set up. Okay. Yes. So my other half is here behind my camera, and he's sort of giving me thumbs up and all sorts of things, aren't you, darling? Never be scared to ask, he says. Absolutely. And that's the point of this group, of course. The Home Baking Business Community UK group is set up for home baking businesses. And if you've got any questions about anything, this is the place to ask them. There is no such thing as a silly question. And people often post, oh, this might be a silly question, but there's no such thing as a silly question, particularly if you're starting up in business. I remember when I first started up, I'd been, teaching for 30 years. So I knew a lot about, planning and strategy and things like that, but no idea about businesses. So I understand how it can be scary. So do ask if you're not sure about something, because that's what this group is for. Absolutely. So let me explain about how the tax thing works. Basically, tax in the UK is sorted out into tax years, and it goes from the 5th of April in one year to the 6th of April one year to the 5th of April the next. That's your tax year. And basically, the tax people, who are the HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. So if you hear HMRC, that's what they're talking about. They deal in that time space. Okay. And it's often the end of that tax year, the April the 5th, is the sort of the time when you need to start thinking about, your totals and adding things up. But as I go through this evening, hopefully that'll be clearer. Okay. So you need to know about taxes. So if you've recently started up your business, you've got to think when the end of the tax year is when you started. So, for example, if you started last November, for example, you're starting in the current tax year, and it's not until April the 5th that you need to start thinking about telling the tax people things, if you need to at all. Okay, so there's never any panic really with taxes and with finances. You don't have to do things instantly. You do get lots of time to notify the tax people, and I'll come on to deadlines and things in a minute. Okay, so the current rules are that you can have a business. Some people call it a side hustle. I'm not keen on that name, but you understand what I mean by the word side hustle. You can have a small business, and if you don't have income of over £1,000, you don't have to tell the tax people about it. That's a relatively recent change. In the olden days, it used to be that you had to tell the tax people within 3 months of setting up your business, but that's not how it works now. So let's say you started your business last November. If by April you've had income of over 1,000, that's when you need to start dealing with the tax people. Okay, it's not a case of as soon as you hit 1,000, you've got to tell the tax people. It's not a case of that at all. You've got to think about tax year, how much you've taken in the tax year. Okay. If you're not sure about that, do ask a question. And I can advise you on that if you're not sure, but that's basically how it works. So if you started your business after April the 6th last year, you've got until April the 5th this year until you have to do anything about it tax wise. Okay. If you've if you've not taken in 1,000 as income, and that's what's known as gross income, which means that you don't take anything off it for expenses for that allowance. If you haven't reached that 1,000 threshold, it's called a trading allowance or a hobby allowance. If you haven't reached that by the end of the tax year, then you don't need to register. If you have reached that threshold, that's when you need to notify the tax people, because they want to know about it at that point. Okay. I think they changed the rules. I think it was about 5 years ago they changed the rules because they were probably getting lots and lots of self-assessment for businesses that were just earning hundreds, and of course it cost them to have people to process it. And so I think their thought was, well, actually we can let that go because the tax we're going to get from those businesses is going to be very, very small. So we'll only worry about the ones that we're likely to get money from. That's probably what the thinking was. So if by April the 5th you have taken in more than £1,000 from your sales, then that's when you need to register. Okay. And you actually have until the 5th of October to do that. So you've got an awful lot of time. So there's no sort of panicking, I must do that, within a week or anything. You do have quite a lot of time to do that. Okay. Hang on, we've got a question here. Hello, let's have a look. Let me have a look at this. Hi, Annie. I haven't been tracking my receipts or income. Do I need to work all this out for the end of this tax year? I started my business last March. Okay. If you started last March, you actually started your business before the end of the last tax year. But I'm guessing that when between you starting and the 5th of April, so that month, you didn't have an income of more than 1,000. So forget that month. Start from the 6th of April last year and add up your income. Okay. Add up your income to now and keep adding it up until you get to the 5th of April this year. If that income is more than 1,000, then you need to then think about the registering. Okay. Everything starts afresh from April. Okay. So in my business, what I'm doing is I'm adding everything up, and then on the 5th of April, I'll make all my totals. I'll do everything I need to do. But on the 6th of April, I'll start again for the next tax year. So I start everything at 0 again, and then add everything up again. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, just ask me another. But I hope that answers your question. So the key points here are the 6th of April to the 5th of April. So that year, and what happens inside that year. That's the important thing. Okay. Let's have a look at my notes here. So, so the deadline, once you get to April, the deadline to register with the tax people is the 5th of October. You then have until the end of January the following year to actually do your self-assessment and tell them whether they owe you any tax or you owe them any tax. Okay, so can you see you've got loads and loads of time. Nothing is instant. Nothing there's no sort of click finger urgency about any of this. You do have time. Okay. Let's have a look at what we got here. That's a very good question. That's correct. But if you have another job full time and also you run your small business, earning say less than 1,000 from it, do you have to tell the HMRC or not? That is a very good question. If you have a full-time job and you are pay as you earn, so the employer takes the tax and you pay that as you go, if you're that sort of a to the side of what your small business does. So whether or not you've got a job, however much you earn from that job, you're still looking at that £1,000 threshold. Okay. And if you don't do a self-assessment for anything else that you do, you won't have to for that small business earnings that you have. Okay. So I know that's the thing that worries some people, isn't it? Oh, I've got a job. Will it affect my tax? Will it, what you pay for tax in your job, the chances are your employer sorts the tax for you. So you're paying your tax as you go. Yeah. So every month you get a pay slip and it says, here's what you've earned. Here's how much tax you paid. Here's how much national insurance you paid. And this is what you get. Okay. So the tax people are happy because you're paying that as you go. All right. So that's to the side of what you earn as your business. Okay. Is that all right? Does that make sense? Good. So think of your business as separate to anything else you earn. All right. So just think of your business, whatever you earn for any job that you have. Is that if you've got another business, then that's different, because it's a total of all your business earnings that is that £1,000 threshold. Okay, so it's not £1,000 for every business you have. It's £1,000 that you earn self-employed altogether. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So that's the tax thing. That's the deadline. So you can see there's no panic about anything. There's no, I've got to do this instantly. And it's certainly not as soon as I get to 1,000, I've got to register. It's not that at all. Okay. As soon as you get to 1,000, you think, right, by the end of this tax year, then I've got to then submit a self-assessment. Okay. So, what I'm talking about next is how you can organize your finances for your business. If you're a sole trader, which most of us small businesses are, I'm still a sole trader. You legally don't have to have a business bank account. What I do is I have a separate bank account for my business bits and pieces, which is separate from my personal bank account. And the reason I do that, of course, is so that I can keep a track of it a little bit better. All right. But it's not a legal obligation to have a business bank account. There are some banks that don't like you running a business from a personal account. So they won't let you do that. Excuse me. But there's no sort of legal obligation to have a business bank account. All right. And for tax purposes, it doesn't matter how you pay for things. Yeah. Where the money comes from to pay for things for your business, it doesn't matter. So you can, I pay things from my personal account. I pay things from my business account, very occasionally cash, but obviously not so much these days. I don't know about you, but I don't think I've paid anything in cash for ages and ages. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that you get a receipt for whatever you've bought and note down the amount that you've spent. And it's that amount that goes on your expenses list, your expenses. And it's that adds up. Doesn't matter how you've paid for it or where you've paid for it from. Okay. If you've got a separate business account for a sole trader, it doesn't matter if you put some money into it from your personal account. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you take money out of it to go into your personal account. Doesn't matter. What the tax people need to know are two things: how much money you've had in, so how much money have people paid you, and the second one is how much money you've paid to run your business. So think, expenses. So your ingredients, your purchases, all those kind of bits and pieces. I won't go into expenses now, I've done a few lives on expenses, and in my blog, there's a link to the blog where I've talked about expenses, because that's an evening session on its own. Okay. But I mean, often in the group, people say to me, oh, can I take money out of my business account to use? And people say, well, you can pay yourself from your business account. Doesn't matter. You can take it in and put it out, whatever you like. That's not what the tax people want to know about. They don't want to know about your bank accounts. They don't want bank account numbers. All they want to know is how much money you've taken in as a business. And it doesn't matter where it's come to, if you like, or where you've put it. And they want to know how much money you've paid out as expenses. Okay, because what happens when you complete a self-assessment, very briefly, what happens is once you've registered with the tax people, they will then tell you which forms to fill in. You fill in the first form, on which they ask you where all your income comes from. So they ask you whether you've got a job, they ask you whether you're self-employed, they ask you if you've got property that you get rent from, and they ask all the other types of income that you can have. And whichever ones you say yes to, they'll ask you to fill in a form for that. Okay. So I fill in, obviously the first form, which is their sort of what income are you having, and that's called an SA 100, but don't worry about the numbers. Don't let that confuse you. Then I fill in, or I used to fill in the employed form, because I used to be employed, because I had a job and I was paid for it, and that was pay as you earn. And then I would fill in the self-employed form. At the end of this tax year, I won't be filling in the employed form because I don't have a job anymore. I'm just self-employed. Okay, so they go through that and they ask you where your income comes from, and depending on what you tell them, they'll say, okay, fill in this form and fill in this form. And if you do it online, it all comes up online, so it's all automatic. You haven't got to search around for the forms. They just sort of go through and say, okay, please fill in this one now. Okay, so that's how that works. So people often ask me, okay, can I buy things from my personal account? Or I've bought some ingredients, but I bought some things for home as well. Yes, absolutely. I often buy ingredients. So either, if I've got a big wedding cake to do, I'll buy all my ingredients and I'll think, oh, I've run out of shampoo for the bathroom or whatever. I'll add that on. But what I do when I get my receipt, I make sure that everything I list on my expenses is business only. So if I've bought something for domestic use, my shampoo or whatever, my cat food or whatever it is, I take that off the total. So the only amounts that go on my expenses list are things that I've used for the business. So the tax people aren't bothered about whether your shop is just for your business or just for your personal. All they want to know is what the amounts are. Okay. I try and keep my business purchases separate, just because it's just easier with the receipts and I haven't got to do more adding up. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you've got a receipt that's got domestic things on it plus a few business things. You just count the business things up. Okay. So that's basically how it all works finance wise. So you've got to think of the tax year. You've got to think of that £1,000 for your side hustles, although I hate that word. And you've got to think about the important things are how much you've had in and how much you're spending on your business. And it doesn't matter where in your finances that comes from or goes to. The tax people don't want to know about that. They just want to know those totals. Okay. So just to talk about the deadlines again, just to put your mind at rest, because that's what people often panic about. Oh, I need to have done this by now. You get a lot of time to do this. So if you started your business this year, keep adding up your totals for those two things, income and expenses, until the 5th of April. Once you get to the 5th of April, look at your totals. Okay, I've got to so have I got to register? Yes, I have. You register. And you've got until the 5th of October to register. So you've got quite a few months to do it. So there's sort of nothing knee-jerk or panicky about that. Okay, you've got a bit of time. And that's just to register. That's just to tell the tax people that, yes, you might owe them some tax. That's just that. To actually tell them what your totals are, and tell them that you might owe them some money, you have actually got, if you're doing it online, you've got until the following end of January. Okay, most people do it online. In fact, in a couple of years, the system is changing slightly, so we have to do it online. But for now, that's one of the options. If you prefer to sort of download the forms and fill in the forms manually and then post it off, you have to do that by the end of October. You don't have as long to do that. Okay, but I'm guessing that most of you would probably do it online, because it's actually easier. It's easier online. Okay. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. Oh, you asked another question. Where's your other question, my lovely? Hang on. Oh, right. I think it's there. Is it this one? Are we talking about this one? Does the £1,000 include all income or just profit? For example, do I deduct any expenses for ingredients and packaging? Don't be sorry for asking questions, because that's exactly what this session is for, my lovely. Please don't apologize for asking questions. I'd rather you did. Okay. That is a very good question, because that £1,000 is just for what is known as gross income. And gross income is just income without anything taken off it. So, for example, if someone pays me, let's say, £100 for a cake, that is my gross income, that £100. Whatever I have spent to make that cake, so let's say ingredients, I don't know, top of my head, £20, the electricity, the cake boards, all that, let's say that adds up to, I don't know, £30. Okay, though that £30 is my expenses. Okay, but the £100 is my gross income, right? So if I've done, say, 10 of those cakes and taken £100 each for £100 for each of those cakes, my gross income would be £1,000. All right, so that's my gross income. But my expenses, so let's say my expenses were £30 per cake, my expenses would be 300. Now, the tax man wants to know, or the tax person, I should say, wants to know about my 1,000 that I've taken in. But when I do my tax form, I'll say, yes, I took in 1,000, but my expenses were 300. In fact, there'll probably be more than that, but let's say for this. That is when the tax people say, okay, your income was 1,000, but we'll take that 300 off, because those were your expenses. So you're then left with 700, and that's what they tax you on. That profit is what they tax you on. All right. I hope that answers your question. So that £1,000 trading allowance is just for the income. Just add up what people have given you without taking anything off. Okay. And that's where the £1,000, that's how you work out your £1,000. I hope that has answered your question. Have I answered all the other questions? I think I have. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions that are there. If you do have any other questions, do ask them. There is a little bit of a delay. There's about a 10-second delay where I am, so I'll give it a minute to see if anyone else asks anything. But in the meantime, I will tell you about, this is a very good question as well. If I donate a cake for charity purposes, does that count as expenses also? Anything you do for charity does not count as expenses, I'm afraid. Donating to charities is not an expense. If you count it as advertising or marketing, So, for example, you donate a cake for a charity raffle, but it's got your name all over it, and you're putting your details. You can count that as advertising, which is an expense. But charity donations aren't an expense. So that is a very good question. If you look at the expenses, claimable expenses list, it's in my blog. The link to it is in my blog. You can see that laid out, and charities isn't an expense. But that is a very good question, because some people think they are. Here is another question. Are you allowed so much earnings before paying tax, similar to a paid job? What they do, what the tax people do is they look at all your income. Everybody has a personal allowance, a personal tax allowance that you can earn up to before you pay any tax at all. For most people, I think at the moment it's £1,250. I may have got that wrong, but it's about that. So, sorry, not 1,250, £12,500. So you can earn up to that without paying any tax. All right. So if you've got a part-time job, let's say that earns you 10,000 a year. Okay. The chances are you won't pay any tax on it because you've not reached that threshold. If your business then takes your total income over that 12,500, then you would have to pay a little bit of tax on it. Okay. But again, that's another good question. This is when it gets slightly complicated. So if you've got, jobs, you have to think about the amount that you can earn. So, for example, my daughters, when they had their part-time jobs, they were earning, I think it was up to sort of 9,000 a year in total. They don't pay any tax because they haven't reached that threshold where they have to start paying tax. Okay. And similarly, if you've got a business and perhaps your gross income was, I don't know, 15,000, but your expenses were more than 2,500, that actually brings you down below that threshold. So again, you don't have to pay any tax. So when someone says something's tax deductible, it means that they're able to take it off their profits, which means that the amount of tax they pay is less. Okay. So for example, this year, I've actually bought a new computer, a new laptop computer, which I use mostly for my business. So I've charged 90% of it, I've counted as an expense. Okay. Which, because it's a fairly Wizzo computer, which I'm talking to you on, it's this one here, is about £2,000 worth of expenses, which brings my total right down, which means that I'll pay less tax. But it's a completely legitimate expense because it's what I use for my business. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Now, if once you get to April and you think, oh my goodness, I'm going to need to do a tax return and I'm really not sure about this and I really don't know what to do, I'm running my finance course again this year. I ran it last year and I'm running it again this year. And it's basically an online session where I go through how to register with the tax people. So I'll show you all the forms and how you do that. And I will also talk you through a self-assessment. So I'll show you what all the forms are, what the questions are, what it all looks like, which is important because sometimes it's, once you know what something looks like, you think, oh yeah, that looks familiar. I'm okay with this. And I'll talk you through the questions you'll be asked or likely to be asked and what kind of, what you put where on the form, basically. So I go through that in real depth. So that's sort of about an hour and a half, probably 2 hours worth of online session. Okay. So if you think that might be useful, oh, hang on, let's get rid of that for a minute. There we go. If you think that might be useful, the details of it are popping up in the group. I've got a whole set of courses that I've set up for this year. And the course information has popped up into our home baking business community group. And if you look at that course list, down the list a little bit, you'll see the finances one. And if you're interested in that, just hop on that link and it'll tell you how to sign up for that. I think that one is £35 for that session. Okay. So I know lots of people did it last year and found it quite helpful to go through everything they needed to know. Because obviously there's a limit to what I can do in the group here, because some of it gets quite detailed. But what I've given you this evening is sort of a basic overall view to hopefully ease your mind a bit, so you don't panic so much. Hopefully. Oh, another question here. I've just bought a new oven. Can I charge £50 in expense? What you do is you work out how much you use it for your business and how much you use it for domestic. So if you are using it around half the time for your business and half the time for your own use, then yes, you can claim 50% of that cost as an expense. Yes, that's good news, isn't it? In fact, I've bought a new oven this year as well, so I'm going to be doing similar. So I think I've put mine as 50% actually. I can't remember, but yes, you can. Do I offer one-to-one chats for people that need help with anything? I do. If you look on my website, hang on, let me find it. anniebennett.co.uk and scroll down there, you'll see details of where you can get a one-to-one with me. All right. Bear in mind that although I'm a qualified bookkeeper, I can't really do a one-to-one with complicated, detailed financial. So if you've got all sorts of different things going on, I would recommend you talk to a accountant and get advice that way, because I can talk about, being a sole trader and the basics that everybody needs. All right. But if you'd like a one-to-one to talk about your business, then have a look there. If you're not sure whether I can help or not, I can always just pop on a call for 5 minutes and you can tell me what it is you need. And I can say, yeah, I can help with that. Or I might say, actually, I'm not the person you need, and I'll point you in the right direction. Okay. But there we go. So I hope that's answered your question. If in doubt, just email me. Hang on, where's my email? There it is. And I'll let you know whether what you need is something I can help you with. All right. Or I'll point you in the direction of someone who might be better to help you with it. Okay, because I'm not going to take your money if I can't help you. All right. Okay. Let's have a look at this. If I can't locate and track all of my previous expenses and income, will I get into trouble with the HMRC? Right. You've really got to track down your income. It's the income is what you've got to declare. So go back through, however people have paid you and add that up. With expenses, you can't claim them unless you've got proof of them. So if you've lost your receipt, I'm afraid you can't claim that expense. So hopefully this session will make you think, right, I've got to be really careful with my receipts now. Okay. You don't have to necessarily have them as paper receipts. A lot of mine are online. So for example, I do, supermarket shops. So my receipts are actually in my email inboxes, where I've been emailed the receipt. So you don't necessarily have to print them all out. You just got to know where they are, so that if the tax people say, okay, we want to have a closer look, because they do pick people randomly to check. So far, I've not been picked, and I've been running my business for 7 years, but you never know. If you're one that's picked and you haven't got the receipts to show what your expenses are, they won't allow them. All right. So it's really important that you keep those. But that is a very good question. So what you'd need to do is go back and look at, so if people have paid you by bank transfer, you've got to go through all the way back through your bank accounts and see where they've paid you. Okay. If they've paid you cash, it might be a little less easy to track. But you've got to try and do that. I mean, I know some people say, "Oh, for cash, we'll do it this," and they don't put it through their expenses. But as a bookkeeper, I can't recommend you do that at all. Any income you have in, you've got to, be declarable for the tax people. Okay, that's how it goes. I hope that's answered your question, my love. Okay. If you think of a question after I've finished in a second, do pop it into the group. And as I've just said, there's no such thing as a silly question. So do pop it into the group, and I will answer. Tag me in if you're not sure. But also in the group, there are all sorts of people with all sorts of skills. There are accountants in there who know far more than I do. So if you pop it in the group, you'll get advice. But tag me in if you want me to answer as well. But that's exactly what the group is for. So I hope that has helped. I hope that has. I'm hoping that sort of relieved some of the panic from some people, because I know it can be a very sort of, oh my God, it's scary, all this tax and money malarkey, and I don't want to get in trouble. But if you follow what I've said and what I've done this evening, you won't get into trouble. Okay. And the tax people make it really easy. And in fact, if you have problems with anything tax-wise, you can phone up the tax people, who are surprisingly human. I often say this. You talk to someone from the tax office, and actually they are really helpful. They're human. They can sort you out. They can point you in the right direction. And it does put your mind at ease. I've phoned them a few times over the years about different things. It's not scary at all. They're there to put you at ease. Okay. So there we go. I hope that has helped, my lovelies. As I say, do ask if you have any more questions about anything. If you're interested in the course, the link will be in the group, or just go to my Facebook page, which is there, and you'll see the courses tab, and go into there and you'll see it on there. And yeah, so that's when am I doing that? I'm doing that in April. So I'm doing it after the end of the tax year. So by that point, you'll know whether you'll need to do an assessment or not. So that's why I do it in April. Okay. So there we go. Oh, have we got another? Do we get tax rebates as bakers? What do you mean by rebate? You can get tax expenses. So working from home, you get an allowance for working at home. You can count that as an expense. So there's certain expenses that us home bakers can claim. I know over lockdown there was talk about, did you work from home? You can get a rebate. But actually what they're talking about is the working from home expense. So you can claim that. Okay. That's what they were talking about. All right. And the tax people do everything in the tax year. So the chances of, you being able to get a check from them for something you've done, that's not how it works. It works all in the self-assessment sort of envelope, if you like. Okay. I hope that answers your question. If it was something else you were thinking of, do ask again. And if necessary, if you ask in the group, I can always point you in the direction of a link to the tax people's website, and you can see. Okay. Righty ho then, my lovelies. I'm going to leave it there. I think my other half is downstairs sorting out my dinner, so I'll go and see what he's up to. So yes, so here we are from sunny Guernsey. Now next week, I've got a feeling I'm flying back next Wednesday evening during the time that I would be doing a waffle. So I'll have to possibly reschedule next week's, and I can't even remember what it was I was going to talk about, but I'll reschedule and I'll let you know when that's going to be. All right. So in the meantime, please don't be overwhelmed and panicked and scared by finances. Just ask in the group, and either I or someone else will put it right for you or give you some advice. Okay. Well, Oh gosh, that's a really long question. Hang on. I've been stupid enough to register with HMRC on the 1st of October. No, you're not stupid at all. No, it's all right. I registered with my council when I start buying stuff for baking business. I was afraid to start operating. Hang on. Oh, you've run out of space there, my lovely. I've got a feeling the question might be, can you claim for things that you've bought before you started your business? And the answer is yes. So if you bought equipment, say if you bought a food mixer or something just for your business before you started trading, yes, as long as you've got the receipt, you can put that down as an expense. I think off the top of my head, I think you can claim for anything you've bought within 2 years of starting your business. I think it's 2. It might even be longer than that. So if you bought mixers and all sorts of bits and pieces before you started trading, yes, you can claim them. I hope that's the answer to your question. Okay, right. So I'm going to leave it there. If that didn't answer your question, ask it in the group, and I'll come back to it later, my lovely, and I'll answer it for you there. Okay. So yeah, use the group. Don't be panicked by it. Just ask questions, and we'll help you out. All right. You're very welcome. So I'll leave it there. Have a lovely week. I'm going to be sightseeing in Guernsey. You might even get to see some pictures. If you follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you've probably seen some already. Took some pictures of some daffodils because I was amazed they were out. So yes. So have a lovely week. Have a lovely baking week. I'll see you in the group, and hopefully I'll see you at some point live next week. All right. You take care, and I'll see you soon. All right. Bye-bye.